1 minute it was Ohio winter, with doors closed, windows locked, the panes blind with frost, icicles fringing every roof, children skiing on slopes, housewives lumbering like great black bears in their furs along the icy streets. And then a long wave of warmth crossed the small town. A flooding sea of hot air. It seemed as if someone had left a bakery door open. The heat pulsed along the cottages and bushes and children. The icicles dropped, shattering to melt. The doors flew open. The windows flew up. The children worked off their wool clothes. The housewives shed their bare disguises. The snow dissolved and showed last summer's ancient green lawns. Rocket summer. The words passed among the people in the open, airing houses. Rocket summer. The warm desert air changing the frost patterns on the windows, erasing the artwork. The skis and sleds suddenly useless. The snow falling from the cold sky upon the town turned to a hot rain before it touched the ground. Rocket summer. People leaned from their dripping porches and watched the reddening sky. The rocket stood in the cold winter morning, making summer with every breath of its mighty exhausts. The rocket made climates, and summer lay for a brief moment upon the land. Welcome to Vintage SF and Rocket Summer. I'm a co-host along with Michael K. Vaughn and others. Michael K. Vaughn started Rocket Summer last year, 2024. What is Rocket Summer? Well, for each week in July, we'll be reading from 1 decade of vintage SF or classic science fiction. Week 1 will be those novels or short story collections prior to 1940. Week 2 will be the 1940s. Week 3, the 1950s, and Week 4, the 1960s. I'm quite honored to be a co-host, and frankly, Rocket Summer is something that I've been doing all the time on my channel. So as my regular viewers know, I love to read vintage SF, usually older than, say, about 1985. With July coming up, and I'm getting ready to read for it, I just thought, I could put together 4 books from each of these decades and allow you, my viewers, to actually vote on the one you would like to see a review on. So I'm creating 4 videos and 4 polls for each of the decades. This is the introduction video, and we'll take a look at the pre-1940s books that I've selected. I commit to reading the book that you, the viewers, select, and perhaps if I have enough time, I might read a second one for that week. If I'm able to keep to that reading schedule, we'll get to have 8 books over the month of July. Before I show you the books that I've selected for the pre-1940 books, I just want to let you know that in the description below, you'll find links to all the other co-hosts or those who are taking part in Rocket Summer. Week number 1, pre-1940. I selected 4 books that I'd love to read, and I'm going to show them to you in chronological order, starting with the oldest. I thought it was important to go back and select a text from the 19th century, so I selected Mary Shelley's The Last Man from 1826. This Penguin edition here is a really good companion to the Penguin's edition of Frankenstein, the 1818 text. Let me tell you a little bit about this book. From the back, the landmark novel by Mary Shelley that invented the human extinction genre and initiated climate fiction. Some might call this the first post-apocalyptic novel. Written while Mary Shelley was in a self-imposed lockdown after the loss of her husband and children, and in the wake of climate-changing Mount Tambora eruption and a raging cholera outbreak, The Last Man is the first end-of-mankind novel, an early work of climate fiction, and a prophetic depiction of environmental change. Set in the late 21st century, the book tells of a deadly pandemic that leaves a lone survivor, following his journey through a post-apocalyptic world that's devoid of humanity and reclaimed by nature. But rather than give in to despair, Shelley uses the now ubiquitous end times plot to imagine a new world where communities and alternative ways of being stand-in for self-important politicians serving corrupt institutions, and where nature reigns over humanity. Shelley's second major novel after Frankenstein, The Last Man looks ahead to a greener future in which our species develops new relationships with non-human life and the planet. And the cover illustration for this one is by Eleanor Taylor. So, this is the first option from 1826. For the second option, we're going to go to 1924, We by Yevgeny Zamyatin. This is a new translation by Bella Shayovich. Wall Street Journal says, the text of science fiction dystopias. And Ursula K. Le Guin says, the best single work of science fiction yet written. Let's take a look at the back. And the blurb says, the one state is the perfect society, ruled over by the enlightened benefactor. It is a city made almost entirely of glass, where surveillance is universal and life runs according to algorithmic rules to ensure perfect happiness. And D503, the builder, is the ideal citizen, at least until he meets I330, who opens his eyes to new ideas of love, sex, and freedom. A foundational work of dystopian fiction, inspiration for both Orwell's 1984 and Huxley's Brave New World, We is a book of radical imaginings, of control and rebellion, surveillance and power, machine intelligence and human inventiveness, sexuality and desire. It is both a warning and a hope for a better world. This new edition also includes Ursula K. Le Guin's essay, The Stalin in the Soul, on the enduring influence of Zamyatin's masterpiece, and George Orwell's 1946 review of We. There we go. Another classic. 2 classics in a row. This next one is from 1930, and it has an author who is more well known as an editor for Astounding Magazine, John W. Campbell's The Black Star Passes, Humanity Against the Men from the Invisible Sun. On the back it says, John W. Campbell. At his death in 1971, he had served more than 30 years as editor of Analog, which used to be Astounding Magazine, science fiction's leading magazine. His fame as the editor who brought about the golden age of science fiction in the 1930s and 40s overshadowed the great reputation he had made as one of the leading writers in the field. Here is one of his first and most famous novels, a classic of science fiction from the great years. The Black Star Passes. Now, most people know John W. Campbell's writing for the novella Who Goes There? It's the basis for the films that are called The Thing. Don't know anything else about this novel. But there you go, a third choice. And the fourth and last choice, When Worlds Collide by Philip Wiley and Edmund Ballmer. This one is from 1933. There was also a very famous old film made of this. Out of the horror of doomsday comes hope for life, for love. It says on the bottom here that this is a new, revised edition. Reading from the back. The secret no one could keep, that a planet larger than the sun was sweeping toward Earth to bring certain destruction in weeks, days, hours, that nothing could halt it or alter its course. That, barring miracles, all was lost. The earth was doomed. Here is the brilliantly convincing account of how men and women might sink into depths of depravity or rise to new heights of love and courage. Was there hope for a few? In the frenzied moments before catastrophe and chaos, not even those in the League of the Last Days could be sure their spaceship would escape the Holocaust. When Worlds Collide. And this edition that I have has a beautiful green text block. So there we go. 4 possibilities for prior 1940. When you finish watching this video, you can go to posts on my channel page and you'll find the latest post will be the choices for week 1 of Rocket Summer. This is what it'll look like. There's a brief introduction to Rocket Summer and then you can see those 4 choices there. The Last Man by Mary Shelley from 1826. We by Yevgeny Samyatin, 1924. Oh, I think I'm going to have to correct that one. I made a spelling mistake on Samyatin. There's a Y instead of an I in the middle of his name. I'll get to that after I finish making this video. The Black Star Passes by John W. Campbell, 1930, and When Worlds Collide by Philip Wiley and Edwin Balmer, 1933. So now it's up to you. Which book would you like me to read and review? I look forward to seeing the results. Feel free to make a comment on this video or a comment in the poll. Until next time, the 1940s, keep reading.